Officials announcing 7 counts of first-degree murder for the Highland Park shooting suspect, with more to come. Joining me now is Mark Claxton, retired NYPD detective, now director of the Black Law Enforcement Alliance. Mark, what's your reaction to that presser? I'm hit with a lot of emotions and a lot of questions, but as a retired officer, what's your response to what we just heard at that press conference?
Well, I mean, there were significant and substantial disclosures by law enforcement, but to be honest with you, Jason, this feels more like a Groundhog Day moment. We've been in this position many times. We've heard many of the same statements by different law enforcement representatives, and it is painfully too familiar for the larger community. I think what's missing in a lot of the discussions, or a lot of the energy and movement towards how do we affect positive change, and as far as minimizing the level of gun violence in the nation, is, you know, examining the pathology of these domestic violent extremists. These mass shootings have a somewhat similar kind of tone and ring to them, and we have to begin to examine and connect the dots and use some of that predictive policing that law enforcement community is oftentimes talking glowingly about when trying to assess the level of risk that is out there from these domestic violent extremists.
I can connect the dots right here. It's alienated young white men who are influenced by right-wing philosophy. We have videos of this guy talking about violence. He's a failed rapper. He's a Trump supporter. I mean, the profile of these mass shooters is plain to see for anybody. It's plain to see. We see the race, we see the ideology, we see the access to weapons. We can't do anything in America about races. We can't do anything in America about racist white guys. We can't do anything in America about people feeling alienated. And most people who have mental illness don't engage in violence. But we can do something about guns. And so my question to you is, when you hear some of these local officials say, hey, look, an assault weapons ban would make this a lot easier, do you think anyone, do you think more state police, do you think national police units across the country will take up that banner and put pressure on the Republican Party, because we know they're the ones behind this, put pressure on the Republican Party to push forward with an assault weapons ban? Because the other factors that led to this violence, we can't stop those things.
It's already been established that a lot of the national organizations that are supposed to be supportive of law enforcement, or even made up of law enforcement, don't have the courage or the integrity to demand an assault weapons ban. And a lot of the legislation, even enacted legislation and proposed legislation, is just hitting around the edges and playing games with what is an obvious issue and problem. There's a clear path to mitigate damage and minimize the level of danger caused by these domestic violent extremists and the firearms, the guns that they use to inflict so much pain across the community. It's a question of whether or not individuals, entities are committed to really affecting change, or they're satisfied with just having a press conference post-incident and explaining what happened and what prosecution will take place.
And one thing here, Mark, I thought also was interesting in this presser. You have one of the attorneys say, hey, look, we're doing this for justice. This is not for revenge. I have no problem if this is for revenge. There are families that have lost kids. There are families that have lost loved ones. There are people who will be forever traumatized by this. You don't have to lose someone. There's a 9-year-old kid out there that saw somebody get their brains blown out, and they're never going to be okay again. Do you think that the urgency of these moments is ever going to break through? Because the idea that there is no place safe in this country, do you really think we're at a point in this nation where people are just like, I guess I'm just going to throw up my hands and I'll never go to a grocery store and I'll never go to a 4th of July fireworks event? You know, are we living at a point where law enforcement and right-wing forces have just said that getting shot randomly has to be a way of life?
I think what's happening is that they have kind of discounted or ignored the PTSD that we, not even those people who are directly involved and affected by this level of violence, are experiencing. There is a collective PTSD across this nation. That's why these types of shootings, these types of mass killings have more impact on people as of late. And people are having trouble addressing and dealing with it from a physical and emotional standpoint. And I think that you have entities, you have politicians and sociopolitical organizations that are not accounting for the PTSD that the everyday person is experiencing throughout the nation, whether or not you got shot or shot at or you lost a family member. We're all suffering from this PTSD brought on by this level of gun violence.
And while we're all suffering from the PTSD of gun violence, we are not equally suffering under the violence of police themselves. I want to turn to a disturbing police incident out of Akron, Ohio. Police are releasing body camera footage of the fatal shooting of 25-year-old Jayland Walker, shot dead by police after fleeing a traffic stop last Monday. You know, fleeing just like the shooter did in Parkland, but he survived. Police are now saying Walker suffered more than 60 gunshot wounds and was unarmed at the time of the shooting. This gun was recovered in the vehicle, but police confirming he was unarmed at the time of the shooting, killing sparking protests in downtown Akron. Hundreds demanding justice for Walker, civil rights activists calling the killing, quote, a murder. I'm going to take you through the incident and show you this body cam footage. I want to warn you, the footage is disturbing. Seconds into the pursuit, the police department described a sound that was, quote, consistent with a gunshot.
Shots fired, that vehicle just had a shot come out of its door.
That vehicle, referring to Walker's, then, as officers surrounded Walker, he jumped out of the car and ran, away from them, making them in less danger. Police chased him. The department said they first deployed stun guns before unloading a hail of bullets, killing him.
We're slowing down here, slowing down. Stop.
Cremo was asked if he could do them a favor. They almost bought him a hamburger. This guy gets shot. Police said he suffered more than 60 gunshot wounds. The police chief saying the officers must be accountable for every single shot fired. The handling of the incident, police fatally shooting Walker as he fled that traffic stop, is in stark contrast to how the police treated 22-year-old suspect in that Highland Park mass shooting incident this weekend that killed 7 and injured dozens. That suspect was arrested without incident. Mark, is there any way to reform this? Because short of complete police abolition, I don't think you can train people out of the kind of behavior that we saw from Akron this weekend.
You can't train people out of that type of behavior who are ingrained into a system that has become corrupt within itself and reluctant or in denial about recognizing the role that race has played historically in the enforcement of laws and what role that plays in the killing of Black and brown people by police at such a disproportionate number. There's no way to get around it until we are willing or until we have a conversation about the role that race plays in these incidents. There is no resolution to them. And I will predict that we will be back at this place again shortly, having another discussion about another Black man shot in a similar way in short order, if God spares our life.
Mark Claxton, thank you very much.